Givebutter fam, Givebutter fam. It's that time again. I am so excited to see each and every one of you. I'm so excited. We are in for a treat today. Okay, y'all. We are going to talk about how to go from basic to branded in your Giving Tuesday campaign. But really the knowledge that you're going to get today is going to expand the field. So I'm so excited. Y'all, I want to know in the chat, and for those of you who were on the call last time, our chat is working now. Okay, come on, somebody. I want to see in the chat who you are, where you're calling from, and one word to describe how you're feeling today. Maybe a little emoji or something. I want to see it in the chat. Sierra, come on, somebody. It's already doing it. And make sure you hit to everyone, okay? When you're writing in the chat, make sure you let us know to everyone so we can see who you are, where you're calling from, and a word or emoji to describe your state today. I love it, I love it, I love it. Kelly's in the house. Come on, hey, Kelly. Jordan's in the house from Omaha, Nebraska. Come on, the Givebutter fam goes far and wide. I love it. Susan from PA, come on. Who else? I love it. Chandra from Idaho. Jim from NYC. I love it. Ali from Washington. I love it. Everybody is coming in. Wenda. Ooh, come on. We got a lot of people in the house today. Mark from Louisiana. Kristen from Maryland. I know it's raining. I was just in the DMV, okay? The rain followed me all the way over to New York. Come on, somebody. Andy from Greenfield, Massachusetts. I love it. SF is in the house. Hey, Jaron. I love it. Lillian from Wisconsin. Y'all, it is so good to have the Givebutter fam in the house. If y'all don't know, we are in our Giving Tuesday webinar series. And let me tell you, okay, it has been a treat, okay? It has been so good. We've been hearing from so many amazing people. We've heard from Dana. We've heard from so many great people throughout this entire time. Dana Snyder kicked us off talking about ads, and we are going to keep the ante going, okay? We have one of my favorites, Ariel Glassman, in the house. And like I said before, we are going to talk about how to go from basic to branded and how to effectively brand your Giving Tuesday campaign. But like I said, this knowledge is going to go far and wide. It's going to help you with all the things that you're getting ready to do, okay? So who is the host today? If y'all don't know me, get familiar. My name is Floyd Jones. I am in New York, New York. Okay, at the beginning of the year, I was in Michigan, and now I moved, and I just moved to Harlem. So if anybody is from New York in the house, let me know in the chat, okay? If you're in Harlem specifically, you can find me on LinkedIn, email me, DM me, whatever, because we need to get lunch or something, get some coffee or tea, anything. Let me know. I oversee community and partnerships here at Givebutter, and I have a heart for grassroots org. I love watching us win. We are all in this together, and that is everything that we do. We are creating these webinars, we are creating these tools, we are creating these resources so we can all win, because when you win, I win. Come on, somebody, okay? Today, we're going to go through our welcome and agendas. As you all know, we're going to go over some announcements and updates. We're going to talk all things branding and campaign management with Ariel. We're going to do a live Q&A. And then y'all, I have a treat for you today. So we've been trying to do this for a while, but now it is finally happening. We are actually going to go live on Facebook. We're going to go live on LinkedIn. So make sure you follow us on make sure you join the Facebook fam, and make sure you follow us on LinkedIn. You can find us on any of those platforms, and we're going to go live after this. So if we don't get to all of your questions, I know we're going to have some questions. We're gonna tackle them in one of those lives. It'll be for 10 minutes or whatever, but we're gonna do a deep dive. We'll answer any specific question that you have. So I hope you can join us, okay? You all know the rules, okay? Use the Q&A for chat for some questions, okay? Comment and use emojis. You know I love a good emoji. If you know Floyd, you know I love a good emoji, okay, somebody? Keep the chat kind and respectful because we are all one Givebutter fam. Before you send a message in the chat, make sure it's going to everyone and not just hosts and panels. I mean, I love to just talk to you, but spread the knowledge to everybody in the group, okay? Recordings and slides will be emailed. Every week, someone's like, can I get this email? Can I get these slides? And the answer is yes, okay? The answer is yes. Before you even ask, the slides will come to you, okay? And if you are in the Facebook fam, I just said we're gonna go live in the Facebook fam after this, but if you're already in the Facebook fam, I wanna see who is in. I'm gonna go to the chat. Who is in the Facebook fam? I wanna know who is in the Facebook fam. Let me know if you're in and comment, I'm in, I'm in, I'm in. Ariel's in, come on somebody. Who else is in? Who else is in? Aaliyah's in, Jessica's in, Chandra's in. Oh, I love it. Thank you, Chandra. Kelly's in, Michelle's in, who else is in? Amanda's in, Stephanie's in, Krista's in. I love it. Y'all, if y'all not in the Facebook fam, what you doing? I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you are doing, okay? Come and hang out with us in the Facebook fam. Things go down. And if you didn't know, every single month we make donations. The Givebutter staff makes donations to people in the Facebook fam, but you only can be in the Facebook fam to get these donations, okay? So if you want this community, if you want this knowledge, if you want this connection, if you want this money, come on somebody, join the Facebook fam, okay? And y'all, if you haven't heard the news, I am so excited, but Givebutter Gives Back is live, okay? We are officially donating over $50,000, okay? That's not 50,000 coins, that's $50,000, okay? To nonprofits on Giving Tuesday, okay? If you want a piece of the pie, if you want to get involved, and remember, we are not giving donations based off of how much you raise. It's all about your supporters. If you're mobilizing your community, if you're mobilizing the people to support you, then we want to amplify your voice. And we're going to do that on Giving Tuesday. So make sure you learn more and apply, givebutter.com/Giving Tuesday, okay? Or when you get this slide deck, you can click on that link, but make sure you submit your application. We'd love to see it. We'd love to see you win, and we want to be able to donate and continue to expand what y'all are doing, okay? Coming up, what we got, so y'all know who knew we just launched auctions. If y'all know we just launched auctions and you're excited about it, make sure you make some noise in that chat. Lily already says yes. Come on, somebody. I love it. Auctions has been off to an amazing start. Okay, y'all saw me going once, going twice, and I hope you sold. Okay, well, people are sold on our auction so far, and it is amazing to witness and see. What can you believe that we have more in store? That's right. We got more in store, okay, for 2022, okay? We got live display coming. We have a mobile app, okay? So y'all thought y'all just found me on Zoom. Y'all can find me on your phone now too. Come on, somebody. We have a mobile app coming. We have registration fundraising coming. So when you want to launch that fund run, we have sponsors and matching dollars in here. It's all going to be coming up very soon. And of course, it is all free. It wouldn't be Givebutter if it wasn't FREE, okay? So that's all coming soon. So make sure you get excited for that. Y'all, I'm so pumped. I mean, you know I'm happy. You know I got the energy. But let me tell you about Ariel Glassman, okay? Ariel is the founder of Common Great, okay? And she just is great, okay? When she said the title, I was just like, well, how does it feel? Like now your business matches who you are. And that's amazing and so exciting. But she builds forward-looking fundraising practices that get results, deliver tools, strategies, clarity, and capacity for grassroots organizations. And her campaigns have raised some of the most on Givebutter to date, okay? She's won many awards, including a Givebutter Toasty Award, come on somebody, for best campaign and most inspiring COVID relief campaign. Y'all, I am so excited for you to get this knowledge. With no further ado, Ariel, where you at?
Right here, Floyd.
I'm so excited to see you. How you doing?
I am doing really well. Thank you for that lovely intro. Although I will say, I did not win any Toasty Awards, but it was an honor to be nominated.
Yes. See, I don't know. We need to go back to the judging panel booth because I don't know. We must have something skipped the system, but it's okay. You are the #1 winner in Givebutter's heart because you've been with us since the beginning. Before we jump in, how have you seen things evolve and grow over time at Givebutter? What's been something that's excited you?
Oh my gosh. Well, honestly, some of the stuff that you just flashed that I think is really incredible for, the future of the world of online fundraising, like the live displays, right? All of a sudden, the tool can be brought into so many more contexts. So I love that you guys started as an online giving platform, but you're really stretching what you do in response to community need to make the tool more flexible for all these other environments that are all of a sudden coming back because we're back in person a lot of times.
We're back in
person.
That's
my favorite thing about Givebutter is when people are like, hey, we need this. You guys are like, okay, cool. Here it is a month later.
I love that. I love that. So we're going to be talking all things branding today, and I don't want to take any more time. I'm going to let you do your thing and share your screen, but I'm so excited. Thank you so much. And we're going to, guys, don't forget to use Q&A because at the end, we're going to dive even deeper, okay? Take it away.
Can everybody see this? Are we good? I'm going to assume that's a yes. Okay, so our agenda today, we are here to talk about branding your campaigns. And we're going to start by just teasing out a little bit of a nuance between what is branding and what is marketing, because I think that's important to understand. Definitely going to talk about why you should be branding Giving Tuesday and end of year campaigns. What are the effective angles for creating a really great and compelling brand? How you bring it to life, how you manifest it in the world. And we're going to look at a couple real world examples that are actually clients of mine from the last couple of years, grassroots organizations who did successful year-end campaigns on Givebutter that were heavily branded. So without further ado, let's talk about branding versus marketing. You could hear a lot of different ways people could describe the difference for these two, but I think in analogies. And the one I like to think about the most is that branding is the author and marketing is the publisher, right? Branding is about strategy. Marketing is about the calls to action and the actual tactical implementation. So we're backing up, and while you're going to look at some expressions of a campaign brand in marketing materials, we'll look at those for our examples. They are not the same thing. And we're really here to talk about that source identity, that source brand that is going to create everything that you can market for the campaigns. Okay. So why brand your campaigns? Well, I'm sure I'm not the only one who has, clicked a, hey, donate to our year-end campaign email and been completely underwhelmed and unable to differentiate why I should give to a certain organization or even who they are. And it just doesn't stick out. So the big number one reason is to differentiate your campaign. Everyone is raising money on Giving Tuesday, and lots of organizations continue to raise money throughout the rest of December. It is a low signal to noise environment. So how do you stick out? How do you get people to remember you, right? Branding can also help reflect that core why of your organization, the reason that you exist, the things that you are trying to accomplish in the world, as well as the why of the campaign, right? In any campaign, we're talking about what we're going to be spending the money on and what we're raising money for. And so there's a couple layers of why in here that your brand can help you access and express. And it can help you create an angle for storytelling, right? We are telling stories inside our campaigns, and you can kind of create a through line of really contiguous stories that, create an ecosystem really pointing at everything you want donors to know. And oftentimes you can create, a through line with the branded phrase and sort of the brand that you create. A couple other pieces. So it also creates opportunity for the copy to really, I think, explode with creativity, rhetorical concepts, repetition, and sort of building the case throughout all of your copy. You'll see a couple examples of that. And most importantly, this one is critical, long-term recognition among your audience. Philanthropy is not going to get any less competitive. It's not going to get easier to fundraise because a lot of nonprofits are not going to be doing it, right? Like we are on this journey, and people need to see stuff over time. They need time to develop a relationship with you. And this is actually a great way to sort of prime someone to be like, oh yeah, I always give to that Play It Forward year-end campaign. We want people thinking that way. And so branding helps the recognition piece get a lot more specific and really help you stand out. Not just like, hey, right now, but over the long term of your fundraising. So we are going to very briefly talk about something that I think is often not talked about in fundraising, which is there's some legalities here. So, when you come up with a brand, and you should go through this process with organizational names, other things that might be part of your marketing and fundraising efforts, somebody else could have trademarked that. And if you do, it can put the organization at a little bit of risk. So I always suggest really doing a deep Google on on your brand name or the phrase. Use those Boolean functions to really make sure that you are scouring and understanding whether other nonprofits, especially those who are either in your mission space or your geographic region, are using it. And I would also check it against the USPTO trademark database, which I'm actually going to show you what it looks like because it's a little labyrinthine and confusing. And at first it made me want to go hide in a corner, but now I know how to navigate it. So let's take a look here. Y'all can see this is the trademark electronic search system, the test. And this is sort of the place where you will look it up. So we're going to look at a campaign later called Play It Forward from one of my clients. So the way to get through this fastest is to choose plural and singular. Make sure you're choosing live marks because those are the only ones that matter. Do the exact search phrase and you submit your query. And what happens when you do that is you're shown a list of active trademarks that use that phrase. And just because there are trademarks that use that phrase doesn't mean you can't use it, because when you click through, what you will find is a unique trademark record for each of these. And right here, goods and services is really where you want to look, because the idea behind trademarking is you trademark them in these classes of goods and services. So I have common great trademarked in nonprofit, but I couldn't do anything about somebody using that in a totally different field. So it's a little bit nuanced, but definitely cycle through this. And we've had this conversation with board members who might have been concerned, with executive directors, when we came up with really great phrases, they all of a sudden went, but what if somebody tries to take it away from us? Which of course we don't want that to happen. So that's a little bit about how we keep it legal. Let's talk about angles for branding. So you'll see a few things show up in some of these examples. Some of these are very tactical, like the call to action. If you can get your campaign brand to actually reflect and consistently repeat the call to action, that's usually a winner. We want to always be marketing that, and it doesn't just have to be with a button that says donate now. The other thing I really like to focus on is, again, we talk about a low signal to noise environment. You and everybody else are fundraising, stoking emotion in a low signal to noise environment, because emotion is one of those things that can grab people and make them pay attention. We won't look at the full version of the campaign I'm about to mention as an example, but we did an end of year campaign last year with an organization called Feminist Frequency, and the campaign was called Enough Already. And they were responding to things in the gaming community where they continued to have abuse and harassment. And we really tried to get people to pay attention and go, yeah, enough already. I believe that too. And then also, this is the classic goal in all of our fundraising outreach. We want to prompt people's understandings of themselves, their values, their identity, and their self-beliefs, because giving is ultimately an act of helping the donor become their ideal version of themselves, the person who would do X, that best version of me. So fundraising is really about that. And so you need to prompt that. You need to create brands that bring up people's beliefs. And one of the campaigns today will be very much along the lines of prompting people's self-beliefs. Okay. So a brand exercise. We're not going to do this here, but something that we've recently started doing is really working with not just fundraising teams. In some cases, our clients don't have fundraising teams, but with our program teams and the executives for a brainstorm to come up with what the campaign brand should be. And we've basically assigned everyone to bring a word or a phrase that comes to them when they think about the last year at their organization or in their mission space. We actually just had this conversation yesterday with another client, and it was really fun, and I could see the wheels turning. Frankly, it was also a moment where we got to do a little education in real time to folks who weren't fundraisers about how all this stuff comes together. And then they felt engaged. And later, when we asked them to maybe be part of donor stewardship, they might feel a little bit more invested in the process. So this is a really fun one to do. Your job in this is to really shape this and maybe not have it be a runaway train of ideas, but to really help shepherd from that development perspective, what I think a lot of the great ideas will come up from your program and executive teams. Okay. So I suggest doing this one if you have not yet branded a campaign. So how do we bring our brand to life? So campaign titles are part of it. We will also often have subtitles and taglines, and the visuals are critical. We have done some pretty intensive work creating, color schemes, typography, textures, templates. They're in line with the overall brand of the organization a lot of times, but kind of with a twist. And we're always careful to make sure that we're creating assets that can be reused or kind of scattered all throughout the digital ecosystem of your campaign, across your social, your Givebutter page, your website, email marketing, et cetera. So you can see a list here of some things that we typically create once we've decided a brand that will help us pump out the content in a quick way as we move along with it. So that's a part of it. But how do you actually manifest that brand into the world, into the online space, into the meet space, into all the ways you're raising money at the end of the year? So it's really not just visuals. It's copy, it's tone, it's the intention of the way you're writing. And what we want to do is make sure that that branding is actually showing up, right? And again, we're talking about repetition and consistency because this is what people need to see to actually internalize information, and whether you're asking them to do something if they actually think they might be the person who should do that thing. So we're going to look at some examples shortly where you're going to see, you know, a lot of brand expression in the landing page copy for campaigns, in the emails, in social media storytelling, in some video storytelling. And we're not looking at an example of this, but even your peer-to-peer support materials. If you have a peer-to-peer aspect of your year-end campaign, you know, that little one pager that you give out about how to set up your page and, you know, 5 hot tips, put that in the brand too. So let's look at some examples. I'm going to go out of full screen mode because I've got some stuff for us to look at online. But the first organization is called Game to Grow. And they are essentially using tabletop gaming and games like Minecraft and Dungeons and Dragons for therapeutic, educational, and community growth. You know, they run a lot of social skills development games for young people and for adults, many of whom are on the autism spectrum or have ADHD or otherwise neurodiverse or neurospicy in some way. And so this organization is really sweet and really fun. And they're a grassroots organization. They're based in Seattle. But one of the things we were raising money for is during virtual times, they were able to do this with people from all over the world. So that was some really fun messaging to try to bring to life. And I'm going to go out of full screen and we're going to take a look at some of them. So this is the campaign page for Game to Grow. You can see here a little bit of insight into their actual branding, but we had a video, right? This is called Play It Forward. And the concept of the Play It Forward was the idea that we're asking people to give back and create, you know, in many ways, a better future for the kids in the program through what we do, right? And so the act of playing it forward. So that was a call to action. This is an example of a call to action theme. And it allows us to go to the donors and say, we need you to play it forward. And of course, play being a pun on gaming. So we were pretty tickled when we came up with this. It passed the trademark search test. And so then we began really expressing it throughout everything. So this was the campaign page. And we were sure to make sure to bring the branding into the content as well. And you can see that we've got colors that are working. I mean, there's just sort of, there's just some consistent things here that you're about to see, I think, on an even more across all of the channels that we communicated. So this is an example of one of our campaign emails where we had a header, where we had a quote box that had the exact same kind of vibe. And we talked about Play It Forward and used it as a call to action very, very specifically several times throughout. And you know, branded slide to support the video that was in there, etc. Call to action, again, includes Play It Forward as the phrase. So that's an example of how we might take those brand expressions and all the things we're preparing and use them in different contexts. And we did it for social media too. So that was our basically save the date, hey, Giving Tuesday is coming. And that was really the moment where we introduced the Play It Forward brand to the community at large. We did things like create, you know, this is a background for Instagram Reels and stories so that we had the ability to create campaign branded stories and things like that that weren't just the traditional post format because we know that stories and Reels are getting a lot more engagement. And we had a Twitter header. So we created, you know, for all of our platforms where we had a, you know, we're intending to express the campaign, creating custom graphics for those that were in the right size, etc. So that's an example of how we kind of took not only visuals, but also the language about playing it forward and really mixed it all together to create something that felt really cohesive. And as you can see, you know, it was a success. This was their very first year-end effort. We set what felt like a really modest $10,000 goal. And over the course of it, we were ultimately able to raise over $27,000. So almost 3 times what our original goal was. So this strategy worked really well for a young organization that didn't have much of an established reputation in the philanthropic community at large, much less in our home community of Seattle. So that was one example. And the next one is with an organization that is very dear to my heart called Facing Homelessness. And I've worked with them for about 5 years now. And what Facing Homelessness does is it's a very unique and compassion and community-driven approach to ending homelessness. But they do it in a very particular way that feels very, very different from many other organizations in the social services space. And part of their vibe is that they started as a photojournalism project, documenting people who are living unhoused on the streets and telling their stories to the world. And they ultimately turned into this full-fledged nonprofit. But their style is very, very different. So in some organizations, especially with Game to Grow, you know, myself and Caroline, who works with me, who I saw, who's also on this webinar. Hi, Caroline. You know, we didn't have much to work with. We had to sort of create the brand from the beginning and really help develop a lot. With Facing Homelessness, our challenge was, how do we create a specific branded aspect of the organization for this campaign that fit within the very specific kind of language and tone and the communication style that they have. So a little bit of a different challenge that branding presented for us in this next case. So here we are. This was their campaign page. We did also have a video. Let's see. Okay. Again, we did our classic build out the story, but I'm going to show you a little bit more of that in depth. This is the story that we had. The campaign brand was above and beyond. The organization had started asking people just to say hello to folks living unhoused. And over 10 years, all of a sudden, they are doing survival services. They are actually building, you know, green, sustainable tiny homes in Seattle. And we sort of felt like the organization had started to go above and beyond its original purpose. And we were asking donors to go above and beyond with us. And this to me is an example of the sort of branding angle where you are prompting identity, prompting people's self-beliefs, kind of challenging them a little bit to live up to their own expectations and hopes for themselves. You know, when we put and repeat this so many times throughout our campaign copy, it really does kind of reinforce it and put someone in the position where they're going to ask, am I the kind of person who's going to go above and beyond for this? And it, you know, this was a very successful campaign. I think we raised ultimately $260,000. And a great deal of that was grassroots online support.
So I don't want to interrupt too much, but I really want everybody to pay attention to what Ariel just said. You know, the idea of saying from just say hello and then seeing how they were able to build this movement over time. I really, really, really want everyone to take that in, because so many times it's so easy for us to say, if they don't make the donation, they don't matter. Right? If they don't give us $100, if they don't attend my event, they don't matter. If they don't like my post, but we have to start thinking about what are the other ways that people are also involved in our community, right? Because your brand is also how you engage with your community, right? Your brand is every time you show up. Your brand is how you decide to show up and how you allow other people to show up alongside you, right? And so if this organization is so amazingly strategic, because they're saying, hey, just say hello. Like, you can get involved and you can make an impact by just acknowledging another human exists, right? And so I want everyone to think about on this campaign, especially as you're beginning to plan your Giving Tuesday campaign, right? Maybe you are at the place where you're asking for the donations, but what are the other ways that people can start getting involved, right? Mm-hmm. Research is showing now that more and more people are likely to give money directly to a person to help them pay their bills, right? Or get involved in another way to maybe take out the trash for them. What are the other ways that people can get involved, right? So that eventually you can see your organization grow beyond itself, right? So I don't want to interrupt too much, but I think that's such an important part that people need to take on and listen to.
Well, two things. Number one, among your brand phrases, Floyd, you can bring one in from my friend who actually runs another consulting company. He says, your brand is the promise you deliver on every time. I always like that. But I want to name that one of the things here that we're trying to do in a very nuanced way is actually pair the donor's journey and their relationship to the concept of ending homelessness with the organization's journey. Right? We're both arriving at the same point where the organization is going above and beyond, and donors want you to do that with us. So again, really kind of bring them into the journey and the path and trying to plant it as a part of their identity and call on that to make them take action. So I'm going to show you an email and social media too, just so you can see how this got expressed in other content. This was one of our campaign emails. So there you go, right away, right in the subject line. You know, we had branded headers so that every email that came out had the theme, showed the faces of the people that we serve, and included an update about how far we were towards our goal. And you can see here that above and beyond, again, is repeated a couple times. And this is a very similar narrative you see here to what was on the campaign page. So this was a little bit subtler than on the campaign page itself. but still very much connected. And this is an example of sort of the style of writing that is, really unique to them. Like we're talking about creating loving connections. We're talking about building an unrelenting movement of kindness. This isn't just like, hey, we're a shelter. And so part, I think, of living this brand is really, really paying attention to the fact that there is a lot of language they use that is very, very different, and making sure that that works with the above and beyond kind of theme. Here is an example of our kickoff Giving Tuesday is Tomorrow post. Very much branded. This is an image that people recognize from the Facing Homelessness community that we will often put into things that are anchored with other brands because people will connect with it right away. A lot of our core donors and supporters will connect with it right away. And this was our, hey, we met our goal. How about our stretch goal announcement? So again, very similar. It's not necessarily super complicated, but we are reinforcing that identity prompting brand at every turn. All right, let's now go back to our full screen. So that was Game to Grow, and this was Facing Homelessness. So when you get these slides, you'll be able to see the links to these campaigns. And, oh, well, I'm from the East Coast. We finished early, plenty of time for Q&A.
I love that so much. I also wanted to see, do you have a capacity? Sorry, do you have the capacity to also share what are some of the tools that these campaigns utilize in the camp? What are some of the Givebutter tools that they use during their campaigns? Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, that's a great example. Actually, for a lot of our campaigns, when we get close to the end, the style that Common Great does, we usually will create a, sort of a full year-end approach, of which Giving Tuesday is the kickoff. So I just wanted to clarify that context as well. We don't tend to do a lot of Giving Tuesday standalones. We look at them as the start of something bigger. And Floyd, can you repeat your question just so I make sure I answer it exactly?
I just love that a lot of the organization use things like campaign announcements, or they use like the goal bar. Like, what are some of the tools that they utilize to really continue to thread that brand throughout the campaign?
That campaign update feature that you guys added that we were able to start using last fall, I think was crucial because we were able to pin updates that also had branded graphics in them, or said, hey, we met our original goal. Thank you for going above and beyond. New goal, this. So that was an important tool. We also will actually literally scrape the supporter comments, screenshot them, and create an appeal out of them later in the campaign. That's one of my favorite tricks, where if we're looking for that social validation, especially with a campaign that's about belonging and identity, like Facing Homelessness, although this worked really well for Game to Grow too, we actually created some graphics that took the best comments from that, especially from folks who were saying things like, my kid had such an amazing time in this program, happy to support. We actually turned that into an appeal. So the social validation piece of the supporter feed, we, at some point in the campaign, turn it inwards on itself and use it to, convince other people, but off of the Givebutter platform. We post that on social, we emailed it. So that's, I think, another way to use that unique tool.
I love that. So we have a lot of questions coming in the Q&A, but I'm the host, so I got a couple minutes left. But one of the things I was thinking about was we have a lot of small grassroots organizations on the call, right? Where would you say is the best place for them to begin? I know that you had some homework in the slide deck and whatnot, but where is it the best place for them to begin when they're thinking about their brand? And the reason why I ask that is because I think that right now we're almost getting into that crunch time mode for Giving Tuesday. And then we automatically just, sign off and we're like, okay, well, I got to do 3 social media posts and I got to do 2 emails and I got to, shoot. It's like, no, but like the brand, right? We talked about the branding is different than the marketing, and you're giving yourself an opportunity to differentiate. So where can people get started?
I mean, I think for grassroots organizations, I think any of those 3 strategies that we talked about would work. I would start, honestly, I would start with that conversation, even at a small level, because what I find is that the best and most compelling brands, they're coming from a place where it's not just development people talking about it, where you're really deeply engaging programs. I mean, when we have these conversations with clients, the stuff that comes out of the program team's mouth sometimes is absolutely mind-blowing, and it's not showing up in any other way. So even if it's a small group, I would encourage you to have this kind of conversation. And I also might look to who is approving the campaign work, who's ultimately in charge, and make the case to them for why you want to have a brand in the first place. Because you might experience, an executive director going, I don't understand why we need this. Why are you spending all this time on this? I don't want to pay for that graphic designer. So there's a piece of this where figure out if this is something, if you just want to go full bore, start the process yourself, great. Otherwise, what stakeholders need to be engaged, especially when they've maybe done year-end fundraising in a very sort of unbranded, like, hey, give to our organization at year-end kind of way before. This will feel super different. So kind of prepare people inside the organization for that.
Y'all, I love what Ariel just said. Talk to your people, and your stakeholders are not just the people who approve your campaign. Your stakeholders are also the people who are going to be beneficiaries of your campaign. Come on, somebody. How often do we raise money, add a stock photo here, add a picture of a person there, maybe throw in a video there, and they have no idea they have no idea that they're just marketing collateral, right? How are you infusing the people that you're working with into what's going on, right? One of the joys that I had, one of the campaigns I used to run was called So Every Child Can Play. And we did that So Every Child Can Play campaign every single year. It became like a thing that everyone just knew about, right? I loved when I went on the field, we provided free sports for kids. I love when the kids were even saying So Every Child Can Play towards the end, right? Because they knew what we were working towards. They knew that they were also a part of what we were working towards, right? So again, this is all about how do you bring your community. We all about community here. So how are you bringing your community into what you're doing and not just delivering what you think they need, right? On a silver platter, right? So I love that. That's continuing that branding thread. So we have some questions here. Okay, we have a lot of questions. So, okay, so let's see. So this question is from Jim, but somebody else asked this question regarding matching donors, securing sponsors. How important is it getting a donor to match gifts into the success of a Giving Tuesday campaign? So I'll say that from that point, but then also I want you to also talk on why your brand is important into bringing in the right type of matching donors and corporate partners. I think that they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, to tell you the truth, most organizations have matches. They're working with somebody who's not a new relationship. I'm not entirely certain, Floyd, that branding is a huge part of bringing in those folks behind the scenes who are creating those big levers. I think that's more likely for corporations. And there is some interesting interplay here because Feminist Frequency, who we didn't use as an example, but for whom we have hosted multiple campaigns on there, they do have significant corporate givers, but they're actually part of the community of game industry folks who they are trying to affect change on. So to a certain degree, the campaign branding, if we're going to hope for contributions to that or matching dollars for that, you know, their style is a little bit in your face, and we are sort of cognizant of that, and we, you know, would talk to folks about what we mean by this campaign. But for Facing Homelessness, you know, I can tell you that big match is from a donor who's been with them for years. We could come up with a pie in the sky theme, and they'd be like, okay, because they are in love with the organization.
But exactly what we were just talking about was in terms of your brand is not just the colors and the typography, it's everything that you do, right? So I always say the marketing will bring them in, but your brand will keep them in, right? Yep. Because they're now invested into it. And now they got to the point where you just say, we're going to paint color by paint numbers, whatever, and they're going to get involved. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. I love that. Anne asked a really great question. Anne said, I work with a US-based nonprofit that supports a school in Kenya, and it's really hard to build involvement in the brand when many of our supporters will never visit Kenya. Any advice on how to build involvement in a movement despite distance? That's a great question.
Interesting. Well, first, I would kind of ask you, who are the stakeholders you're interested in getting input in? If they're US-based donors, it might be easier than you think. I also feel like a great place to kind of test your brand internally before maybe bringing it to a bigger group of people is with your board. Or if you have advisory boards and things like that, I almost might recommend kind of like gut checking there first before you figure out who that bigger, you know, layer of stakeholder might be. But I'm also not entirely sure that not every organization is going to have the kind of mission and the kind of program delivery where it makes sense to engage the people you serve in the branding conversation versus the program staff in the branding conversation. You know, in many cases, the people we serve, we want to be very cognizant of the kind of free labor we are asking them to do on our behalves when we develop the storytelling aspects of the campaign. But I guess in general, for bringing people in, start with your inner circle, tease from there. And also make sure that you're asking people who you are actually going to take feedback from in an actionable way. Don't run this past a donor and be like, we're going to do whatever you want, and then not do it. So a little bit of a slippery slope there.
I would also say in that same regard, the story plays a huge role, right? Like I am a big, we talk a lot about charity water in our industry, but I love contributing because I love actually seeing my impact in action, right? Like I donated to them a couple of times, but I still know what my well is up to. You know what I'm saying? I already know that community and I most likely will never see that well in real life, right? But what got me is, hey, I believe everyone should have clean drinking water, right? Like I believe that this is something that is important to support and whatnot. So you don't necessarily need to ever see the impact that you're making. And look at all the crisis responses, right? How many people are donating to hurricane relief efforts? How many people were donating on Givebutter to efforts to the war in Eastern Europe and Ukraine and whatnot? So you don't necessarily have to go and see and touch and feel the mission to know to be impacted by it, right? What you do need to do though is cultivate a story and craft your mission, right? And craft your statement so that way people can feel that they're getting involved. Would you say?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, one of our most compelling appeals last year for facing homelessness was really featuring a story of a person we'd worked to develop, that we served, that we worked a long time to develop a relationship with, to have them feel comfortable about sharing that story. And it was very much in like from their perspective, and that was a winner, very much so.
I love that. I'm seeing a lot of questions on matching gifts and stuff. So we can table that and talk about that a little bit more in our live afterwards. And if you can't attend, y'all, don't worry. The recording will still live on Facebook and it will live on LinkedIn, but we're going to talk about that there because there are like 4 matching gift questions. But do you have, another question somebody asked was, are there project management guides for branding and the branding process? Which is a great question.
Wow, I'm sure there are, but I don't know of any that are guides for branding, fundraising campaigns, or Giving Tuesday or EOI. They must exist. But to tell you the truth, our process is less of a downloadable toolkit and more like very relational with the clients that we work with. So we, yeah, it's something that we've just kind of developed on our own terms. And actually, in preparing for this webinar, I saw some ways that other people are sort of coming up and working with branding on their campaigns. That was really inspiring to me. So there's always learning that I can do too. But yeah, I don't have a great answer for that.
I love that. Okay, so another person asked, one other thing I was going to say was the tools matter as well too, right? So maybe you're not using a tool to help you with the branding process. There might be more of like a course and whatnot, and Ariel has a lot of good content on her blog on this. But then you can use tools like Monday, Asana, like those other task management tools that can help you with each of those processes. Another person asked a great question. Any thoughts on how to ensure emails and social posts are not speaking louder than other emails and posts? Or how do you have a good balance of fundraising and other informational posts and emails?
It's interesting. One of the things that we're doing a lot lately is looking for like a super performing non-fundraising post to repost, or if you've got a type of content that performs really well on social, before, as you wind up to the campaign, because that's actually going to amp up the number of people. If we have a lot of engagement on a super performing, like engaging post just before the campaign launches, it'll actually help the algorithmic piece. So part of that is you're right in naming that there's a relationship between those two. I don't actually think it's competitive. And frankly, anything that we're putting out in the world that's talking about our mission, our impact, I think you could inherently look at as part of the campaign. Now, I will say that there is a tool that we love to use when we're talking about email marketing in these year-end campaigns. And we are doing this with every client. I've done it with a lot of virtual event productions too. You guys probably have MailChimp. Maybe use Engage from Givebutter if you're using it as your CRM. Maybe that's your email tool. Anything on a platform like that is always going to have some challenge with deliverability, right? You send a MailChimp email, it's going into the promotions tab of most people, and 50% of those people will never even see it. It's one of the reasons that we send a high volume of communications during the campaign. But we have found personalized email merge tools that hook into your actual email systems that you use to create one-to-one personalized variable data field containing donor communications at scale in a relatively short period of time. And the analogy I'll bring is, I'm sure every single person on this call was once the person who's like, and maybe you still are, who is every week doing that mail merge from a spreadsheet into a Word doc to produce your donor acknowledgements. There are tools available to digitize that process for email. Outlook has it built in. Most of our clients are using Google And there's some great tools. The one that we typically use is yet another mail merge. And what happens is these become, you do this and it's all of a sudden you have 100 emails in your outbox. It's a real email from you. It is going to land in the inbox and be read because it's from an actual person. So there's almost a way where I really like to sort of depersonalize a lot of the donor asks out of the sort of like in the cloud mass marketing way we do it and ensure that they are going to get seen and going to get opened, plus attracts opens for you. And that's really helpful to see who you need to follow up with. So,
we love Yam. Yet another mail merge. We love Yam at Givebutter. When you said that, I'm sure Grace and I just had like a moment in our spirits because we love,
I feel like
love.
The executive director of Facing Homelessness, Kevin, he's probably going to throttle us if he hears us say "yam it up" one more time. So
we need to use that. I've never said that, so I need to use that.
Branding.
Right. So many good questions. So Kristen just asked this question. What is your recommendation for balancing two campaigns happening right after another? We're doing an Orphan Sunday campaign in the beginning of November and then hope to switch to Giving Tuesday at the end of the month. Should we combine campaigns? Any suggestions on things we may not have considered?
Well, my immediate reaction to that is, who are the audiences, right? If you are segmenting campaigns and you know that some donors are more interested in this specific thing versus a general ask, you might want to do some segmentation there. Another way you could, because then all of a sudden you're not actually sending two campaigns to one thing. And the truth is you want to have one fundraising offer kind of publicly going at a time. When you're like, you could do this or this, the number of people who do either of those things will drop dramatically. So in the future, I might also advise being really careful, maybe not to put back-to-back campaigns like that, especially if you're a young organization and maybe you don't have a ton of segmentable data and your only choice sort of is to kind of spray and pray to the same audience on both. I might rethink that in your calendaring next year. But for this year, I would say, think about segmentation, think about separate and specific audiences. And I would also say, think about donors from that campaign happening before Giving Tuesday, whatever that piece is. Well, maybe you want to ask them for a monthly donation at the end of December if they're giving to you in November, because, oh, look at that right there, the 30 to 60 day window. That is the time when people are most primed from their one-time gift to make a new monthly gift. So perhaps you ask the donors from that campaign for a separate thing that is different from the one-time gift focused year-end campaign that you're otherwise putting on starting with Giving Tuesday.
I love that. Oh, that's so good. You said my favorite word, segmentation, baby. I love that word because it's so incredibly important. A lot of times we talk about donor burnout. A lot of times we talk about, donor fatigue and whatnot. Well, that happens when we're asking people the same thing over and over and over again and not responding to what they're actually saying, right? How many times do you get that same email and I'm like, well, I already gave the last campaign. You didn't even tell me nothing. You know what I mean? And my thing is, this is a part of your branding, right? This is a part of your branding. If you don't care enough to tell me thank you for my last donation, if you don't care enough to give me time and space and actually let me know what my donation is actually doing, then you don't care about me. And if you don't care about me and you don't care about your donors, how do you want them to continue giving back to you? You know what I mean? So think about all of that. It's all about intention. And I love what you were talking about in the beginning. If your brand starts with intention, everything you do starts with intention. So be intentional with how you want to communicate with your donors, because when you're intentional about communicating with your donors, then you're intentional about your mission, right? Susan asked a great question, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, but I wanted to bring it up again. We are having an anniversary next year. Should this be included in 2022 year-end campaign and branding to continue into the whole year, into the new year? I love that question.
That's intriguing. Are you planning to use, my initial response would be to ask a follow-up question, which is, are you planning to use that anniversary as a fundraising lever? And I'm guessing the answer is probably yes. So I think it is wise to bring that into the equation. Let me think for a second.
I don't know if you're on this call, Susan, but if you are, feel free to put it in the chat, any clarifying. But I love what you were talking about before in terms of like how you bring campaigns together, right? Like using Giving Tuesday as a jump off for the whole end of year and not just making it be about, that one specific day, but how do you use that momentum?
Yeah, honestly, so my brain's been spinning as you were talking, and since I was asked, my instinct would not be to necessarily include the 2022 end of year branding to include the anniversary piece, in part because you're not there yet. It might be confusing next year when you might actually include it in your year end piece, because it will actually be the year of the anniversary. Also, I think that gives you some lead time. Usually anniversary fundraising efforts there's some behind the scenes component where you're probably working with major donors to secure large anniversary gifts and things like that. Almost like a capital campaign, you kind of don't want the cat out of the bag too soon. So I would say focus on that at next year's year end. And if you've got a great brand developed this year, see if you can tweak it next year to have some kind of anniversary angle. And then the following year, go back to the base version of that brand. But also, spoiler alert, you don't have to have the same brand every year. A lot of times it works, but for some organizations, that it's better to switch it up. It's interesting to think about. I actually, I'll give an example because that seems to run counter to something I said, which is that sort of repetition and getting people really familiar with something. I'll use an example from an event, which is not necessarily a campaign, but there's an organization in Seattle, an arts organization that I go to every year. And their gala is called Spectacle Spectacular. That's the brand. They have a different sub theme every year, where it is Spectacle Spectacular 6, Lost in Space, and everybody shows up. Like, I think I showed up dressed like an episode of Cosmos, that kind of thing. And, the following year it was, Spectacle Spectacular 7, Fire and Ice. I think you can kind of do the same thing with brands. We sort of talked about a tagline. I saw that question come in the chat, and that's why I started talking about it, because it felt relevant, Floyd, for what you were saying. So.
No, I love that. We do have a lot of questions in the chat, y'all. We probably have time for maybe 2 more, so please feel free to add them to the Q&A so I don't miss them. Okay, one good question that came up, it's a quick one, I think, but someone pretty much asked, okay, if you're using the TSS search, Katie asked, if you're using the TSS search, if your phrase shows up as part of a longer phrase that's trademark, can you still use it?
Ooh, that's a good question. And I'm going to have to say, I do not know the answer to that one. But typically, if a phrase goes on and is bigger than the one you're searching for, it is most likely okay. But this would be a great time to be like, who's the lawyer on our board? And can I ask them this question, or to ask them to hunt down the answer for me from one of their other lawyer friends who specializes in trademark? Like, that's why we have people of those kind of professional skill sets on our boards. So.
What are your thoughts on incentives and drawings during Giving Tuesday? Not to mention Givebutter Gives Back, because
yeah, Giving Tuesday, it's a real, what I like to call a tentpole moment where you're drawing. There's a lot of attention drawn to the organization. Part of that is a rising tide. Everybody's thinking about giving on Giving Tuesday. In many respects, especially in that kind of environment, I think you might expect me to be like, yeah, anything you can do to get people's attention. I personally do not like to condition people to expect things in return. And while things like raffles and giveaways, I think, can work really well in an event context. So people are like, I've had 2 glasses of champagne. Okay, I'll buy 10 raffle tickets instead of 5. When we're fundraising online primarily and doing a campaign like the ones I've shown you, I think it gets people off on the wrong foot. The things that we give back to our donors are an intangible feeling. They're a feeling like they're coming closer to their ideal version of themselves and building the world they want to see. It's not stuff. You might find other people who disagree with me, but I prefer to keep it relational and why focused and mission focused from the start, and not put any of the mechanisms for this kind of campaign into the hands of something random or a different type of motivation.
I love that. And Grace made a good point. It puts so much extra work on your team, right? Like, we are not fulfillment centers, okay? Like, I'm not going to be running out to try to mail you this hat. Like, I'm tired. Like, we're trying to do the mission, right?
Okay. Yeah. And I'm going to add an asterisk here, because one of the ways I think you could effectively use some kind of incentive is not with the public, but potentially with your peer-to-peer fundraisers. If you have a significant
100%.
Peer-to-peer campaign, and, part of organizing those folks is being like, hey, whoever, has the most donors to their page, or whoever raises the most, although that one, equity issues, you're going to get free tickets, to the Seattle Center box at the Kraken game, right? That might be a way. It's smaller, it's less public. We're not necessarily conditioning people to be transactional. And the people who are doing peer-to-peer are likely already people who are deeply invested. So they're not really doing it for that reason. It just helps
100%.
give them a reason to show up to that commitment.
And I also think that if you're listening, so one of the things that I did was build a junior board, and a lot of them wanted specific opportunities and they wanted opportunities to grow in their career. And I was like, okay, great. Like, how do we tie in these opportunities? Maybe they have a meeting with our board chair, or maybe the winner, the person who raises the most, can get XYZ thing. So tying it into actually what your community wants as well, that it does community helping community. You know what I mean? I know I say the word community a lot, but come on, somebody, it's me.
Okay. Another exception I'll say is maybe arts organizations, because that's one of those organizations where there's probably a lot of overlap between people you serve, the ticket buyers, and donors. And so to a certain degree, offering something like, pair of free tickets in the front row to a show, actually it could be mission driven. And I would, if you're an arts organization, I would maybe there might be some exceptions there because that actually feels like you are engaging people towards the mission more.
I love that. Okay, the last question that we have that we'll answer live, and the rest of these we can try to tackle them during our live on LinkedIn and Facebook, is from Emma. How do you balance Giving Tuesday and end of year? We hypothesize Giving Tuesday is more of an acquisition, whereas end of year is more applicable to our known file. I assume she means file of donors. How do you feel about that idea?
It's interesting. I think there used to be a lot more delineation between what is a giving day good for and what is other times of year good for. There is still data that shows that giving days are good at acquisition, but there is an emerging set of data that shows that we are retaining more donors and cultivating more existing donors through Giving Tuesday than we think we are, right? Those people are still seeing everything happen in real time. So to a certain degree, I'm not sure that it's wise to go one's for acquisition, one's for retention. But what I will say is that you're right that those are the two big opportunities. We kind of create bookends of our campaigns where there's sort of a mini sprint and a rush of stuff around Giving Tuesday. We do a little update at the end of that week. And then there's each week has something in it, but then we go hard again at the end of the year, December 29th, 30th, 31st. So we kind of have these bursts with some lower level but consistent continuance of the campaign there. And in reality, there may be some segmentation you can do differently. But I don't, for most organizations, unless you really have like hardcore data that shows Giving Tuesday, 80% of the people giving to Giving Tuesday are new. That's different than, it looks like it's 40 or 50. That's a really strong reason to maybe do that. So I think my instinct is for most organizations, that's probably not the right way to segment, but look at your data because you could be the outlier.
100%. Data drives decisions. I love that. Y'all, can y'all give me a virtual round of applause for Ariel? If y'all love that, please put it in the chat and say you did. Ariel, you blessed us again with the knowledge. Now I get it. This ain't common great. This is uncommon great because I don't know many people like you, okay? This is uncommon great because you are one of a kind, all right?
Thank you, Floyd. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Soak in the love in that chat, okay? All right.
Awesome. Well, if you loved it, follow us on LinkedIn, sign up for our email list because you'll see more. Plus, our emails have gifts, lots of gifts.
I will attest to that. They do, and I love them. Thanks so much, Ariel. All right, y'all. So this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for joining. And remember, we are going live on the Facebook fam and we are going live in LinkedIn once this is over. So if you still have more questions that you have, I have a few questions up here from the chat. We're going to answer them. So make sure you feel free to join us. Okay. Also remember a few reminders, register for our upcoming webinars. Okay, I know we love a good guest, but the next webinar is going to be all me. Okay, and we're going to go deep. We're going to dive deep into how to mobilize your supporters. So many people talk about how do I actually get fundraisers? Well, we're going to crack the code. Okay, I was lucky and blessed enough and worked hard to be able to build volunteers boards across the entire country. So we're going to go deep into my code and how we were able to do that. So you don't want to miss it. Fill out our webinar feedback survey. If you love the guests, if you love the content, make sure you let us know. And then again, join the Facebook fam, follow us on LinkedIn so you can get access to exclusive lives and you can see more of me, of course. Come on, somebody. And then don't forget, Givebutter gives back. We already have so many applications. It is boggling to see how many people have already applied for this giveaway, but we are donating over $50,000 to nonprofits this Giving Tuesday. If you want a piece of the pie, make sure you apply. Oh, that was good. I didn't even, come on, somebody. If you want a piece of the pie, make sure you apply, okay? And thank you again. Thank you to Ariel and thank you to each and every one of you. You all are why I do what I do, okay? You get me up in the morning. I got to show up for my Givebutter fam. Thank you for continuing to show up for us and thank you for continuing to do the work. That is why we do this work, so we can help everybody on the other side of those dollars, okay? So continue, follow us on Facebook or on LinkedIn if you want to continue this conversation. We're gonna be live, do a 10-minute live and keep the party going, okay? Blessings, y'all. Goodbye.